Hello, welcome to this, the first of the Richardson Lectures, and in this series we're going to be talking about river landscapes in the UK following the AQA GCSE Geography specification. In this first session we're going to be talking about the long profile and changing cross profile of a river. And the objectives for this session are to be able to identify the features of a drainage basin, to describe how a river's long profile changes downstream, and also to describe how a river's cross profile changes downstream and understand the reasons why this takes place. First of all though, some images showing rivers. This obviously not in the UK, this is the Amazon in South America. And what this shows is just how dynamic and changeable rivers are as they move downstream. This first image in the top left showing a river at its source, in this case a spring, water trickling out of rock which will eventually become a stream and then a bigger river until eventually it works its way down towards the sea at its mouth. So rivers change a lot in their course. Now the first key concept we're going to talk about is something called the drainage basin. So the drainage basin is an area of land drained by a river and its tributaries. All the rainfall that falls within a drainage basin will work its way through the land, through the rock, through the soil, into the rivers before moving out into the sea. So if we take a quick look at that in diagram form, here's an example of a drainage basin. So anywhere within this red dotted line is our drainage basin. It's the area of land which has been drained by the river, all the soil and rock all feeding water into those rivers. This red line is very important. This is a watershed which marks the edge of a drainage basin. Any rainfall that falls outside of that red dotted line will therefore flow through an adjacent drainage basin. It's usually a ridge of mountains, it's an area of high land that separates two drainage basins. Two other key concepts then, the source and the mouth, the source being the start of a river and the mouth the point at the end of the river, either where it meets the sea or a lake, but most commonly where it reaches the sea. A tributary is a name given to a smaller river that joins a main river. This is what increases the flow in rivers as more tributaries are added. And this is known as a confluence. This is a point where two rivers meet. So where a tributary joins a main river, we've got a point of confluence. That's more important later on in this topic where we think about flooding. If you live near a point of confluence, you're at an increased risk of being affected by flooding. So let's talk about the long profile. The long profile this shows how a river's gradient changes downstream. It's sort of like doing a line graph showing how height above sea level changes as you move downstream. As the river flows from its source to mouth. Now the long profile is concaved or curved in shape, as this diagram now shows. And we can separate that gradient into three key areas: our upper course, our middle course and our lower course. Now in the upper course, the river gradient is very steep. It's very high above sea level, it's a mountainous area, it's got a steep gradient. But as we move to the middle and lower courses, that gradient becomes increasingly flat. And that's due to the type of erosion that's taking place there. Up in the mountains, high above sea level, there is a lot of gravitational potential energy wanting to pull that river down towards sea level. The river's goal is to reach the sea. And when it's high above sea level, that means erosion is vertical. It's cutting down through the landscape, through the bedrock, trying to get to that sea level or base level as it's known. Hence why in the upper course we've got this very steep gradient. But as you move to the middle and lower courses, that gravitational potential energy is lost, and as the river reaches base level it can put more and more energy into eroding sideways or laterally, which then causes a much flatter gradient to develop. Now the cross profiles, these are cross sections through a river and its valley. You can almost imagine standing in the river looking upstream. That slice through the landscape, the river and its valley, is what we mean by the cross profile, and that too changes as you move downstream. So in the upper course, the river channel itself is very narrow. It's near its source, there's not that much water in the channel at this point. So it's a shallow channel, often quite rocky as this image is showing. And the valley is also rather narrow and steep-sided. It's called a V-shaped valley at this point, and that's due to that vertical erosion cutting down through the landscape, creating this very steep-sided feature. At this point in the middle course, as more water has been added to the river, the channel itself has become wider and deeper, and so too has our valley. It's now become wider with these more gently sloping sides, and that's because of this increased lateral erosion as we get towards sea level. And that process continues into our lower course. By now we have a very wide, very deep river sat within a wide valley, so wide that it's often very difficult to identify where the valley sides are. Instead, we have this flat land, often up to several kilometres either side of the river, called the floodplain, which, as the name suggests, is prone to flooding. And here, at base level, at sea level, erosion now is all lateral, side to side, causing that channel to shift laterally across the floodplain. So we'll look at a couple of exam questions. This is not a topic we've seen many larger questions appear in the exam papers so far. Here's one example of a short answer question though. We've been given a figure 14. It's a diagram showing the long profile and two cross profiles of a river. Now, unlike our diagram we've been looking at earlier, this has got some data on. And it's showing us some height above sea level, distance from the sea, from the source should I say. And we've got two cross profiles marked on, one sort of middle upper course, one most definitely in the lower course. The first question though, one marker, has asked us to describe the shape of the river's long profile. Now this is a describe question. We don't need to know why the long profile changes, we just want to know about the shape. And it's only a 1 mark question, we don't need to write extensively here. So what could we say? Well, we could have got a mark for saying it's a concave shape. We could say that it's steep in the upper course, becoming more gentle in the lower course. Those kind of comments would get you the mark here. And then we had another 1 mark question. This time we want us to focus on the cross profiles of the river valley, and this time it's suggesting reasons why. So we're not describing now, we're saying why. And as we can see, the valley has become much more flat by the time we get to the lower course, and the reason that is because of that change in erosion. So in the upper course, near the source, we've got the river cutting down vertically through the landscape. That's creating this V-shaped valley. But as we move further downstream, the erosion becomes increasingly lateral, hence why the valley sides become more gentle and even flat by the lower course, creating that floodplain. So that's it for this video. Next time we'll be looking at fluvial processes in our rivers.